right, get ready, because today we are going to be diving deep into some pretty fascinating and maybe even a little controversial ideas about relationships.
Ooh, spicy. I like it.
Oh, yeah. We are going to be exploring David Deida's The Way of the Superior Man.
A classic.
It is. It is. Specifically what he has to say about the dynamics between men and women.
Yeah,
So the book is written as a guide for men.
right.
But for our purposes today, we're zeroing in on his take on how masculine and feminine energies interact in romantic relationships.
Sure. That's where the real juice is.
That's what we're looking for. So one of his core ideas is that men and women are driven by different core desires, almost like two sides of a coin, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's like they're coming from totally different planets sometimes.
Right.
And Deida really nails that,
Yeah.
He suggests that at their core, men crave freedom
Okay.
while women seek love.
Interesting. So, I mean, obviously relationships aren't that black and white.
Of course not. No, it's way more nuanced than that.
Right. But just think about how this might actually play out in everyday life. Like, you've got guys, and I'm totally generalizing here,
Sure.
who get so fired up about competition, taking risks,
Totally.
building businesses, or even just sharing those epic survived a bear attack stories,
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Those guys are out there. It's
Yeah.
like they live for that adrenaline rush, that
Yeah.
sense of pushing their limits.
Daida would say they thrive on that sense of challenge and autonomy.
Exactly. It's like they're driven to conquer, to prove themselves, carve out their own space in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Deida links to this masculine desire for freedom. It's not necessarily about being physically untethered, but more about that inner sense of agency and mastery, like being in the driver's seat of their own lives.
Okay, I see what you mean. So it's less about being a lone wolf and more about that feeling of being in control, being the captain of your own ship.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And on the flip side, you often see women really prioritizing connection,
Absolutely.
diving deep into their emotions, nurturing those close relationships.
Yeah, that's a big word.
Not to say that women can't be adventurous or ambitious.
Of course not. No. Women are just as capable as men in those areas.
Exactly. But Deida highlights this pull towards creating and sustaining those loving bonds
Yes.
as a core aspect of feminine energy.
Exactly. It's like this deep-seated need to create connections, to nurture and care for others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about romantic relationships either. It can be with friends, family, even pets.
So he's saying this fundamental difference in core desires, this polarity between masculine and feminine energy, is actually what fuels passionate romantic relationships.
That's exactly it. It's like, opposites attract, but more like opposites create that spark,
No,
that magnetic pull that keeps things interesting.
without it, it's kind of you lose that electric charge that makes you feel truly alive.
For sure. It's like the difference between a flickering candle and a roaring fire.
Yeah. And connected, as lovers and not just roommates who share a Netflix account.
Yeah, exactly. Deida calls this sexual polarity, this dynamic tension that arises from the interplay of these distinct energies. Without it, he suggests relationships can, become stagnant, more comfortable friendships than passionate partnerships.
So he's really clear that this isn't about rigid gender roles or saying men can't be nurturing.
No, not at all.
Or women can't be adventurous.
Anyone can embody masculine or feminine energy at different times. It's about the overall dynamic in a relationship.
He actually gives a pretty spicy example to illustrate this.
Oh, I love his examples. They're always so vivid.
Right. Okay. So imagine a couple in the bedroom.
Okay.
Things are getting hot and heavy.
Okay.
And the woman actually wants the man to resist her,
Okay.
to hold back from, ejaculate.
It's all back, yeah.
In that moment, he's embodying that masculine energy of strength and restraint,
Yes,
even if it goes against what she's verbally asking for.
exactly. And that kind of dynamic can be incredibly powerful, It creates a sense of tension and excitement that can really deepen the connection.
So it's really about understanding this energetic dance and how it can bring that extra layer of depth and intensity to a relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Now, this is where things get a little more complex.
Yeah.
Deida goes on to explore the challenges that can arise when couples strive for absolute equality in every aspect of their relationship.
Okay. So obviously equality is a good thing.
Of course, yeah. Nobody's arguing against equality.
Right. But what are the potential downsides when it comes to love and passion?
Well, that's what Deida is getting at.
Right.
He argues that when partners try to be exactly the same in all things,
Okay.
it can actually diminish that sense of polarity, that spark we were just talking about. He's not advocating for going back to, like, traditional roles or anything, but he's suggesting that a healthy dose of difference can be a good thing when it comes to attraction.
So if you're constantly striving for like a 50-50 split
Yeah.
in every single area of your life,
Right.
from who takes out the trash to like who initiates sex.
Yeah. It can kind of create a sense of blandness, like you're missing that, that exciting friction that keeps things interesting.
He even suggests that suppressing your true essence, whether you're more masculine or feminine, to fit into this like mold of sameness,
Right.
can actually have negative consequences.
Absolutely. It's like you're dimming your own light, and that can impact not just your relationships, but your overall well-being. It can lead to resentment, frustration, even health problems in some cases.
Wow. So you're probably wondering, okay, so what's the alternative? How do we navigate this?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting and maybe a little bit edgy.
I like edgy.
Yeah, Deida goes on to explore what he calls the dark side of masculine and feminine energy.
Ooh, the dark side. Okay. But before anyone jumps to conclusions, we are not talking about like evil or negativity here, right?
Right. Not at all. He's not talking about being a bad person.
Right.
He's talking about these primal energies that often get suppressed or misunderstood in our modern world.
Okay. I'm intrigued. I'm all ears. What's this dark side all about?
Well, he describes the dark masculine as that warrior archetype. Think of like the protector, the one who faces fears head on, the one who's willing to step up and take charge when needed. It's that raw, assertive energy that can be incredibly attractive and even a little intimidating.
So not the guy who's afraid to ask for directions or change a light bulb.
Exactly. And on the flip side, you've got the dark feminine, which is all about like wild, intuitive, deeply emotional energy. It can be alluring and mysterious, but also intense and even a bit unsettling at times.
Not your typical girl next door vibe.
Definitely not. And Deida makes a pretty bold statement here. He says that deep down, women actually crave this killer aspect in their man.
A killer aspect.
Yeah, but he's not talking about someone who's, literally dangerous, but rather a man who's like decisive, who takes charge, who's not afraid of her intensity.
Interesting. So it's like they want someone who can kind of handle their full emotional range,
Exactly. Someone who won't crumble under pressure.
And Deida argues that when a man embraces and integrates these sort of darker aspects of his masculine energy,
right,
it allows him to show up in a way that's truly like magnetic and fulfilling for both partners.
Right. It's like he's stepping into his full power.
Yeah.
And that can be incredibly attractive to a woman.
Okay. So we've got this dance of masculine and feminine energy. The importance of polarity, the potential downsides of like striving for absolute sameness. And now we've thrown in this whole concept of like the dark side. I'm officially intrigued. But what happens when a woman does bring that intense, dark, feminine energy to the relationship? How does a man like navigate that without getting totally swept away?
Well, that's a question for part 2 of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Because it's about to get really juicy.
Welcome back to our deep dive into David Deida's The Way of the Superior Man. We left off talking about these powerful dark energies, that Deida believes exist within both men and women.
Yeah, and I'm curious to explore how a man can handle that dark feminine energy when it shows up in a relationship.
For sure.
Because let's be real, like those intense emotions can be, a bit overwhelming sometimes, even for the most grounded guy.
Totally. Deida suggests that a superior man meets a woman's intensity not with fear or resistance,
Okay.
but with unwavering love and consciousness.
Okay, I can see how that could be challenging. Like you're being the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
Staying like calm and centered, even as things, swirl around you. But how do you actually do that? How do you stay grounded when your partner is, like, say, having a total meltdown?
Right. Deida emphasizes the importance of not getting swept up in her emotional current.
Okay.
It's about witnessing her experience with compassion and understanding
Mm-hmm.
without taking it personally or letting it dictate your own emotional state.
So it's almost like you're creating a container for her emotions.
Exactly.
Like a safe space for her to, express herself fully
Mhm.
without judgment or the need for you to, like, fix anything.
Exactly. And this brings us to another interesting point that Deida makes about communication styles. He argues that women often speak from their feelings, in the moment, rather than from a fixed plan
Yeah.
or agenda.
So it's not that they're being like intentionally vague
Right.
or like manipulative. It's just that their words are more of a reflection of their like current emotional state, which, as we all know, can be like pretty fluid.
Exactly. And Deida cautions men against taking everything their partners say literally, especially when emotions are running high. It's like trying to nail down a butterfly.
Yeah.
You're just going to crush its beauty.
Okay. So how do you know when to take what your partner says seriously and when to just let it roll off your back? I mean, there's a big difference between I'm feeling overwhelmed right now and I want a divorce.
Deida emphasizes the importance of context and intuition. If you've got a solid foundation of love and trust in the relationship, you can generally trust that your partner's words, even the intense ones, are coming from a place of authenticity. But if things are already strained, it's wise to take a step back and consider the bigger picture before reacting impulsively.
He actually uses a pretty intense example to illustrate this. Imagine a couple where the woman initially says she wants to move across the country with her partner. He goes all in, sells the house, packs up his life, only to have her change her mind at the last minute.
Ouch, yeah.
Deida's point is that, like, the woman wasn't lying. She was expressing her genuine desire, like, in that moment. Her feelings simply shifted, as feelings often do.
Right.
So it's not about blaming her for changing her mind, but rather understanding that, like, feminine energy is often more fluid and less, like, fixed than the way men typically approach decisions.
And here's where Deida's advice for men gets really interesting.
Okay.
He suggests that instead of getting angry or resentful
Yeah.
when this happens, a superior man would take responsibility for his own choices. He wouldn't have blindly followed her lead, but would have checked in with his own intuition and made sure he was aligned with the decision before taking such drastic steps.
So basically, don't put all your eggs in your partner's like emotional basket, even if she's saying like she wants the same thing. Make sure you're on board with the decision for your own reasons, not just because you're trying to, please her or avoid conflict.
Exactly. And this goes back to Deida's emphasis on the masculine principle of direction and purpose.
Okay.
He believes that men are naturally wired to provide direction and leadership, while women are wired to bring energy and flow to the relationship.
Yeah, he's pretty blunt about what can happen when these roles like get reversed or blurred.
Yeah. He argues that if a man consistently fails to provide that direction, his partner may start to feel like she can't rely on him for support or guidance.
Yeah.
She might feel like she has to take on the traditionally masculine role of decision-making and leadership, which can create an imbalance in the relationship.
And this can lead to resentment on both sides.
Absolutely. The woman might resent the man for not, stepping up.
Right.
And the man might resent the woman for not being that soft, receptive energy he craves.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh.
The man shrinks back, the woman steps up, and suddenly you've got this like power struggle.
Right.
That sucks the joy out of the relationship.
He calls this dynamic the ball buster phenomenon, where women become more, assertive, controlling, even domineering to compensate for their partner's lack of direction.
Yeah.
And he links it to men abdicating their responsibility to lead, not because they're, incapable, but because they might be afraid of conflict or unsure of their own desires.
So how do we break out of this cycle? How do men reclaim that sense of masculine direction and purpose in a world that often sends, like, mixed messages?
Well, Deida has some pretty radical suggestions, which we'll delve into right now. So Deida, he encourages men to carve out time for solitude, away from the demands of, like, work, relationships, and even like technology.
So unplug, basically. Get off the grid.
Exactly. Deida believes that disconnecting from the constant noise and distractions of modern life allows men to, reconnect with their inner compass, that deep well of masculine energy that might be, dormant.
Like a modern-day vision quest.
Right.
Head out into the wilderness, confront your inner demons, and return like a stronger, more grounded man.
It's not necessarily about literally going into the wilderness, although that could be powerful, but more about creating space for introspection and self-discovery.
Yeah.
Deida also advocates for men spending time with other men, engaging in activities that challenge them, physically, mentally, emotionally.
So think men's groups.
Yeah.
Sports, or even just like hanging out and having those heart-to-heart conversations that guys sometimes avoid.
Exactly. He sees these men's groups as crucial for fostering a sense of like brotherhood, where men can, support each other in their growth and tap into that collective masculine energy. And while the guys are off on their adventures, Deida suggests that women also need, time and space apart from their partners to cultivate their feminine energy.
So it's not just about the guys going off to do their thing. It's about both partners recognizing the importance of like nurturing their individual energies.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He encourages women to connect with other women, engage in activities that nourish their hearts, bodies, and souls. Like, dancing, creating art, spending time in nature, or simply sharing, stories and laughter.
Yeah.
It's about creating that sacred circle of feminine energy and coming back to the relationship feeling refreshed and revitalized.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Yeah.
Giving each other the space to reconnect with themselves so they can come back to the relationship with a renewed sense of purpose and passion.
And Deida believes that when both partners take responsibility for cultivating their respective energies, they create a more fulfilling and dynamic partnership.
Okay.
It's not about one person, dominating or controlling the other, but rather like a conscious dance of giving and receiving, leading and following, strength and surrender.
Okay. But how does all of this translate into like everyday life? I mean, it's one thing to talk about masculine and feminine energy, in theory, but how do we actually like embody these principles in our actions and interactions?
Well, Deida offers a range of practices and insights that men can use to, cultivate their masculine energy and create more fulfilling relationships. One of the most foundational is this idea of breathing down the front.
Breathing down the front.
Yeah. He points out that men often hold tension in the front of their bodies, from their foreheads down to their genitals.
I can definitely relate to that. Stressful day at work, clenched jaw, worried about money, tight gut. It's like we're constantly, bracing ourselves for impact.
And Deida suggests that this physical tension reflects a deeper energetic blockage.
Okay.
When we're closed off in the front, our energy can't flow freely. We become constricted, both, physically and emotionally.
So how does breathing come into play here?
He encourages men to practice deep, conscious breathing, focusing on expanding the front of their bodies. With each inhale, it's about, softening the belly, relaxing the chest, and opening up space for energy to move through.
Okay. So it's almost like a form of meditation, using the breath to like release tension and create a sense of spaciousness.
Yeah.
But is it really that simple? Just breathe and suddenly you're a superior man.
Well, it's not a magic bullet, of course, but Deida emphasizes that this practice isn't just about, feeling good physically. It's about cultivating a sense of presence and openness that allows us to show up more fully in the world and in our relationships.
So it's not just about the breathing exercises. It's about like shifting our energy and attention outward, away from that like self-absorbed, clenched up state. And Deida takes this concept even further with a technique he calls ejaculating up the spine. Okay, I'm going to need you to explain this one because it sounds a bit intense.
It's definitely one of his more provocative ideas. And before you get any wild ideas, it's not about some, strange anatomical feat. It's a metaphor, but a powerful one.
Okay.
Deida points out that for many men, orgasm is all about like release, about expelling energy outward.
It's like that feeling of I'm done. That can leave you feeling physically and emotionally spent.
Exactly. And Deida suggests that we can actually like redirect that energy, consciously moving it upward through our bodies, up the spine and into the brain.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? Is it some kind of like tantric practice?
It involves a combination of breath work, visualization, and subtle muscular contractions, particularly in the pelvic floor. The essence of it is to consciously contain and channel the energy that would normally be released during ejaculation.
And what's the benefit of doing that?
Deida claims that this practice can lead to, incredibly powerful full-body orgasms that are far more intense and fulfilling than the typical ejaculatory experience. And it's not just about physical pleasure. He suggests that this practice can also have, profound emotional and spiritual benefits.
So it's about tapping into a deeper level of like energy and consciousness, using like sexual energy as a catalyst for personal growth.
Exactly. And this goes back to Deida's core message, that sexuality isn't just about, physical gratification. It's a pathway to deeper connection, both with ourselves and with our partners.
But this all sounds pretty advanced. Is this really something like the average guy can achieve?
Deida acknowledges that these practices take time, patience, and a willingness to experiment.
Sure.
But he believes the rewards are well worth the effort.
So what does all this mean for the listener who's, maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by these ideas? Where do they even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to simply become aware of these dynamics, to start paying attention to how masculine and feminine energies are playing out in your own relationships. Notice where you might be holding tension, where you might be giving away your power, where you might be resisting true intimacy.
It's about becoming more conscious, more intentional in how we relate to, ourselves and our partners.
Exactly. And Deida offers a whole toolbox of practices and perspectives that can help us on that journey. From breathing techniques to communication tips to ways of, cultivating deeper presence. He provides a roadmap for men who are ready to step into their full masculine potential and create relationships that are, truly fulfilling.
And while some of his ideas might be challenging, even, controversial, I think there's a lot of wisdom to be found in his work. He's asking us to question our assumptions, to push our boundaries, and to embrace the full spectrum of our masculine and feminine energies.
And in doing so, he believes we can create relationships that are not only, passionate and fulfilling, but also deeply transformative. It's about more than just finding a partner.
Yeah.
It's about using the crucible of intimacy to, awaken to our true selves, to become the best versions of ourselves, and to contribute our unique gifts to the world.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to explore these ideas for yourselves, see what resonates, what challenges you, and what sparks your curiosity. And remember, the journey of, self-discovery and relationship is an ongoing one. There's always more to learn, more to experience, and more to share. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.